What's good, y'all? It's your boy Havoc. Final round. It is going down. The fight for undisputed Caleb Plant versus Canelo Alvarez. And look, you guys, whether you believe in this old story, whether you want to call it a myth, fictitious or not, I do. I believe in it. Why? Because this is an archetype that has played out throughout history over and over and over again. And I respect the story. And it's as real as it gets to me. David versus Goliath. Now, obviously, Canelo Alvarez is the undersized fighter in this matchup, but he's considered Goliath, and Caleb Plant is considered David. Now, I'm not saying this weekend we're going to see this archetype play out, but it would not shock me if it did. It wouldn't. It wouldn't at all. The only thing that would shock me is Canelo Alvarez or getting knocked out by Caleb Plant. That's the only, I think we all would be floored if that happened, okay? That's the only thing that could shock me. But Caleb Plant winning, not so much, okay? But I have to set the stage here. I have to set the table, give a little context. This video is going to be about the fight breakdown between the two fighters, what I think they should do based off the information I have. But bear with me, I gotta go on a little bit of a rant before I jump into it. Now, a lot of Alvarez fans have kind of called me into question, say I have a narrative, or I'm hating, or I don't like Canelo Alvarez, and I don't know all this crap, right? And you guys, just because I'm breaking the fight down as honestly as I possibly can doesn't mean I think Canelo Alvarez is gonna lose. You don't even know what my prediction for this fight is going to be till tomorrow, okay? You're sitting here assuming certain things based off of your emotion. I understand some Alvarez fans are very hardcore and they take it very personal if you make any sort of argument for Caleb Plant. Even if you're not even necessarily making an argument about him winning, you just say something good about him. It seems like it gets taken personal. And I understand there's narratives in the boxing world. There's lots of tribalism and race-based narratives with the LDBC. They hate Canelo because he's Mexican. That's not what I'm doing here, you guys. I've never done that. I've always kept it boxing. It's my job to analyze this fight as best as I possibly can, to not cut corners, to respect even the underdog and tell their story and talk about what they do well and what they could do to win. That's all I've been doing with Caleb Plant. That's all I've been doing. But people are taking it personal. And I just have to tell you, there's no narrative here. This is a new channel. I'm not backed by anybody. I have no dog in the fight. I don't even have 1,000 subscribers, so I don't even know what narrative I'd be trying to push. I'm just talking what I see tactically and skill-wise by each fight. I did it with Shakur Stevenson versus Jamel Herring. I did it with Anthony Joshua versus Usyk. I did it with Fury versus Wilder. I did it with Boots Ennis versus Thomas Delorme. I give both sides of the story. I talk about, even with the underdog, what they could do to win. That's all I'm doing here. Classic case of David versus Goliath we saw with Alexander Usyk versus Anthony Joshua. A lot of people said, you're fucking crazy. Anthony Joshua is a way better boxer, and he's a bigger man. He's a natural heavyweight. Who is Alexander Usyk? You're stupid. You're hating on Anthony Joshua. And I said, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm just breaking down the fight. I almost went with the major consensus, and I almost glossed over Alexander Usyk. But I did my homework, because that's my job. That's what I want to project with this channel, is giving you honest assessments of these matchups and predictions and breakdowns. And not just that, giving more informations for competitors in the sport and trainers to learn more about the breakdowns and how to analyze film. But, I did my homework on Alexander Usyk, and I said, there's more to this guy than we think. Hold up, he's going into other people's backyards and taking their belt, going into their home countries. He has a pretty good chin. He has a good skill set. He's a good southpaw. He can box for 12 rounds tactically and make adjustments. He has the right mentality. Okay, I looked at all those things, and then I also looked at what Anthony Joshua proposes, and I looked at some of his weaknesses. I made sure to pay attention to the way he was talking before the fight to see how he was going to approach it. Is he going to be the aggressor and cut off the ring and put pressure, or is he going to sit there and try to box with this really good pound-for-pound fighter? and Alexander Usyk. And then I was able to make an assessment and a prediction, and I said that Usyk was going to win the fight, and he did. And I was only able to do that because I read into Usyk's situation, even though he was the underdog. I read into it. And I find it fascinating. So I don't want to cut corners. That's all it is. I don't want to cut corners. When you look at, I want to pay attention to all the details to make sure I'm not missing anything. You know, I find it fascinating that Andre Ward said that Caleb Plant was going to win by KO. There's got to be something to that. Why is he saying that? Maybe it is coming from a purely biased perspective or emotional perspective. Maybe he doesn't like Canelo. I don't know. I can't read his mind and understand the intent and the psychology of what he's saying. But I tend to see Andre Ward as a high IQ'd boxer and more unemotional than emotional, in my opinion, because I've seen that displayed throughout his career. And it makes me wonder, what is he saying that I'm not seeing or most other people are seeing? That he's going to say Caleb Plant's going to knock out Canelo. I know he supports Caleb Plant, but he didn't have to go as far to say that Caleb Plant is going to knock out Canelo. He could have just said Caleb Plant by decision. So I don't want to read too much into what he's saying, but I don't want to gloss over it as well. And then I don't want to gloss over the fact that Canelo Alvarez's team put a rematch clause in place. Why do you need a rematch clause if this is an easy fight? What are you putting that in place for? We saw Anthony Joshua's team put a rematch clause in place. I wonder why. Well, I'm glad they did, because if they didn't, Alexander Usyk would be going for undisputed against Fury right now. Once again, I don't want to read too much into that. Could just be procedure. But let's not gloss over it once again. And I'm paying respects to a good boxer in Caleb Plant. Canelo Alvarez fans, you are only shooting the resume of Canelo Alvarez down. I heard over the build-up to this fight, Caleb Plant is garbage. Caleb Plant is an amateur-level fighter. Caleb Plant is no good. He's a paper champ. And it's just like, okay, that's not me saying that. That's you guys. That's you guys tearing down the resume of Canelo Alvarez. Because even if Canelo Alvarez wins, okay, you're giving the argument that he beat a nobody. Who did he beat for undisputed? Oh, Caleb Plant, the paper champ, the amateur level fighter. See, that's not what I'm doing. I'm giving Caleb Plant his respect because he is a championship fighter. And if you guys knew what it takes, I don't even know what it takes at this point to become a championship fighter until I get to that level, if I ever get there. All I know, it takes a lot. And for this man to bury his daughter, to bury his baby girl, and to become a champ with all that in the background, not just doing what it takes in making the sacrifices in the boxing ring, in the gym, but also dealing with the hardships of life. This dude deserves respect, and he's better than what people are saying. Even if he gets washed on Saturday night, doesn't mean he's a bad boxer. It just means he went up against one of the greatest fighters of our era. And that's what great fighters tend to do. They make championship level fighters look like C-level fighters. And it doesn't mean it has to be over for Caleb Plant. He could take a page out of Canelo's book and redeem himself and become a better boxer. Now, it won't be easy with David Benavidez lurking behind him. That ain't an easy fight. I don't even know if I could favor Caleb in that fight. It's a long road for Caleb, right? If he loses. Even if he wins, it's a long road. But it doesn't have to be over for him, but that's going to be his choice. He could rebuild himself because he's still at a point to where I think he's raw and he has a lot to learn. And if he can get the experience, who knows? Maybe he can manifest into something good. But I'm going to give this man his credit because he told his baby girl, I'm going to win you a belt. I'm going to become a champion. And he did it. He did it. Okay, we can sit there and poo-poo the resume all you want. Look, he's a championship level boxer. Let's not gloss over that. Let's not take away credit from Canelo Alvarez. Okay, if he wins. He's a good fighter, point blank, period. So I'm going to respect both fighters, even the underdog, and I'm going to tell the underdog story, and I'm going to make arguments for what I think he does well and what I don't, because that's what I do for every fight. Please stop assuming that I have some narrative or biased towards or against Canelo Alvarez, because I don't. I'm just doing what I do for every fight. So with that being said, let's get into the breakdown. Let's get into it. We all know what Canelo Alvarez is going to do for this fight because he's done it against every back-footed fighter he's went up against. We saw it with Mayweather. We saw it with Lara. We saw it with Danny Jacobs, even though Danny Jacobs, I wouldn't completely label him a back-footed fighter, but, you know, he had to go off the back foot a lot in that fight against Canelo. We saw it against Billy Joe Saunders. We saw it against Amir Khan. He's going to put pressure. He's going to cut off the ring. He's going to try to rip you down to the body, to slow you down and take away your best asset as a back-footed fighter, your legs, your movement. He's going to wear you down, and he's going to start catching you up top, and he's going to try to get you out of there. That strategy has worked at times better than it has at other times. Didn't work completely, didn't work against Mayweather, didn't work completely or in the best way possible against Lara and Jacobs. Worked tremendously against Khan and Billy Joe Saunders. That's what he's going to do. Now, will there be opportunities to end the fight early against Caleb Plant? I think so. I think a big punch that he can land will be the overhand right. I think he can catch Caleb Plant in the early rounds, and the question will be, how good is Caleb Plant's chin? Can Caleb Plant withstand an overhand right in the early rounds from Canelo Alvarez when he's at full power? Because I think there's a good chance he can get caught with it. With that chicken wing guard, that lead hand down, he's going to be a sucker for it. And we know that Caleb Plant doesn't have A1 defense and A1 head movement. And we know that Caleb Plant likes to let his hands go at times and throw punches and bunches and combinations. And sometimes he's not the most defensively responsible. And that will be a big opportunity for Canelo Alvarez to step in and counter with an overhand right, especially being the undersized fighter. That's one of the biggest tools you can take to turn that size advantage into a disadvantage for your opponent. The overhand right, it will line up nice and perfectly, and we know Canelo Alvarez has a phenomenal overhand right. If you don't believe me, go watch the Amir Khan fight. Then, I do believe Canelo can land a devastating body shot, pending on how Caleb guards his body. I don't know if he's going to come in with a high guard, a low guard, a Philly shell. I don't know. I tend to think he will work out of that Philly shell most of the time. And that's a good idea. Not because I want him to mimic Floyd Mayweather. It's because it's the best guard to protect his body and the vital organs. But Canelo is smart enough to understand, and he has great countering ability and timing to where he knows the best time to catch your opponent is while they're attacking you. So while Caleb Plant opens up from that Philly shell and throws punches or combinations, that may be an opportunity for Canelo to land a good body shot to the floating rib, the solar plex, the liver, the kidneys, either one, right? And sit him down early. But let's say that Caleb Plant does a good job of, his chin holds up and does a good job of protecting his body, and he weathers the storm. We know what Canelo will do. He's going to be patient for the first few rounds. He's going to put in his body shots, invest his dividends, and then he's going to try to slow Caleb Plant down for the later rounds, take his best asset away, his legs, and he's going to start picking up the tempo and the pace and pouring it on and try to get him out of there. Point blank, period. Another thing to note is Caleb Plant cuts very easily. I started saying this, now everybody starting to echo it in the boxing community. Caleb Plant cuts easily. That is a big concern. All right? That is a big concern. Depending on if he gets cut and if it's in the wrong place, it could end the fight. I can see this fight getting stopped because of that. But let's say Caleb Plant weathers a storm. We know what Canelo will do. And how do we know that? Because that's what he's been doing for the last 8 years. I keep on hearing this narrative. Canelo's a drastically different fighter. Why you keep on bringing up the Mayweather fight? He's not the same guy. Yes, in a certain context, he's not the same guy. But let's get into the context here. Let's not gloss over this like most of you want to do. He's a different fighter because his attributes have improved. His speed, his power, okay, his stamina. He's more seasoned, he's more experienced. But stylistically, he's the same guy. I don't care what you guys say. I looked at the film. He's the same fucking guy. Don't tell me he's not. The only glaringly different thing I see stylistically is his head movement. That has improved. His head movement has drastically improved since that Mayweather fight. It's given him the ability to be a little bit more dynamic, okay, stylistically, defensively, and the ability to create more countering opportunities. But other than that, same style, you guys. Let me put it like this. It's like you go buy a vehicle at a dealership, and then you do some aftermarket things to it. You put on a different fender, you put on a spoiler in the back to make it more aerodynamic, get more speed out of it, right? Maybe add some things to the engine to make it more powerful, give it more horsepower or whatever. You know, put on different tires to get more grip or traction on the road. You know, you're improving the performance of the vehicle, but the vehicle is still the same vehicle you got. Okay, better performance, improved attributes, but still the same vehicle that you bought originally. Same thing with Canelo. Improved his attributes, but still the same style intact. How do I know this? Go tell me Saturday what he's going to do that he did differently 8 years ago. He's going to put pressure and cut off the ring. That's what he's going to do Saturday. I guarantee if he doesn't get the early knockout, that is the game plan you're going to see implemented. That is the game plan he has used against every back-footed fighter, whether it was wildly successful or not. That's what he's going to do. So don't tell me he's changed drastically, because that's what he's going to do. You guys, he loses to Mayweather. Now, you can agree to disagree with me. We saw the fight already. He loses to Mayweather even now, as long as Mayweather is in his prime. Even you take this version of Canelo Alvarez, he loses to Mayweather, point blank, period. It's just a bad stylistic matchup. It just is. And he did the same things that he has done to every other back-footed fighter in the Mayweather fight. He cut off the ring. He tried cutting off the ring. It didn't work. He tried going down to the body. It didn't work. You know, he pulled back at certain times in that fight to try to bait Mayweather into counters, walk him into traps. It didn't work. He got frustrated. He lost sight of his game plan. Then he tried to put more pressure to try to show the judges he was the aggressor. It didn't work. Okay, he took that same approach. And don't get me wrong, he refined it a little bit by being a little bit more disciplined, but he did it against Lara. He struggled in that fight. A lot of people say he lost. I don't think he did, but he did struggle in my opinion. And I did see the frustration at the end of the fight on his face, and I did see the frustration in terms of he didn't necessarily abandon the game plan, but you can see he gets frustrated when he starts getting desperate and he tries to put more and more pressure, you know, to try to convince the judges that he won. I saw the same thing play out in the Danny Jacobs fight. Yes, he won the fight. I agree. But that was a more interesting fight than people gave it credit for. I wish I could break down the film. It keeps on getting blocked because of the promoters. Now, he did it against Amir Khan and Billy Joe Saunders, wildly successful. But let's take Amir Khan. Let's not gloss over this fact. Amir Khan was chinny, is chinny. We have memes of him all over the internet of how chinny Amir Khan is going in before that fight. And Amir Khan is significantly small. Well, coming up, what, 2 weight classes? Take on Canelo? That was what it was. Billy Joe Saunders is the one performance I've seen him against a back-footed fighter to where he was flawless victory. And I give him credit for that. But I think Caleb Plant presents something interesting here. I'm not saying he's going to win because of it, but it's interesting. And I don't want to miss out on, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything. Caleb Plant is going to be a bigger man compared to Billy Joe and Amir Khan, but with the skill set of those guys. Now, we've seen Canelo have success against bigger opponents. Sergey Kovalev, for instance. I'm sorry, Sergey Kovalev was burnt out. I'm not being nitpicky here. It's the truth. Sergey Kovalev was burnt out. He wasn't fighting like the Crusher in that fight. He had some wars before that with some fighters, one of them being Andre Ward. He took a L, and he barely scraped off a victory against Anthony Yarde after taking some punishment. And he was in that fight throwing pitter-patter punches. He did not look like the Crusher. and it was a good win for Canelo and going up in weight. But to me, there's some question marks about that one. And then you look at Callum Smith, good win, but I think Caleb Plant presents something completely different than Callum Smith. I believe Callum Smith is like a boxer, puncher, middle of the type ring guy. Caleb Plant's more back foot oriented. I think he has a different skill set. And that's why I'm interested to see what happens Saturday. Now, for Caleb Plant, this is the classic case of the bull versus the matador. Caleb Plant is this new matador coming on the scene, and he's saying, give me the biggest bull. I can take him. I can do it. I can make it out 12 rounds. I can make him miss and pay. And we're all looking sideways like, who the fuck is this guy? What is he talking about? We haven't even seen him in the circuit going against the best bulls. And he's talking about he's going to take on the Black Bull, the Raging Bull, Canelo Alvarez. Who is this guy? Who does he think he is? But nonetheless, that's what he's going to have to be, the matador, the deceptive, the shifty, the dodgy matador, the magician. Now you see me, now you don't. Death by 1,000 cuts. I don't care about the power, you guys. If you're a casual fan, if you think the sport is all about power, because we've seen it play out over and over and over again, power doesn't always win boxing matches. Okay? If Canelo wins this fight, it's because he has more than power. Power is just a cherry on top. Canelo wins this fight because he's more skilled than Caleb Plant, not just because he has power. Okay? Strategically, he outboxes Caleb Plant. That's why he wins. So I'm not concerned about Caleb Plant's power and getting respect. He has enough sting and pop on his punches to get respect. What I'm concerned about, does he have enough skills? Is he going to be disciplined? Is he going to have the right game plan? And will his ring IQ give him the ability to outbox Canelo Alvarez? Mostly the discipline. Because people think that Mayweather had these abilities that were so much far different than every other fighter. But when in all actuality, Mayweather won that fight because he was just very disciplined. That's all it was. Very disciplined, and he had a good game plan, and he executed it properly. That's all it was. It's the only significant difference. Danny Jacobs, same thing. Now I would say he was a little bit lacking in some of, the attributes he needed to win that fight, but he did a good job for 12 rounds. Nonetheless, he made it 12 rounds. So what Caleb Plant needs to do, and a lot of the stuff I'm saying he needs to do for 12 rounds, not just 3 or 4 or 6, he needs to do for 12 rounds. But the key for Caleb Plant is cause frustration, because if you cause frustration for Canelo Alvarez, you can make him lose sight of his game plan, which is cutting off the ring and putting pressure and going down to the body. If you can cause frustration. Well, how do you cause frustration against Canelo? From what I've examined in his past fights with back-footed fighters, you keep him guessing. You create a lot of variation in your game, okay? You got to have variety. So when he gets in there I'll try to break it down in 3 segments. First 4 rounds, 4 to 8, or 4 to 8 round range, then 8 to 12, 3 segments. But it probably won't be perfectly lined up in that. So obviously it's important for Caleb Plant to come out and establish his jab. Got to find the distance. Billy Joe didn't establish his jab, and guess what? He was never really effective as he could have been in that fight. He got absolutely demolished because he never established his jab. So Caleb Plant has to do that. Establish your jab, but don't be predictable. Give variation. Jab upstairs, downstairs. Change up the looks. Lower your level. Change your levels. Utilize your movement. You don't have to jump all over the ring. Be efficient with your movement, but don't be predictable. L step out to the right, pivot out to the left. Feint. That's going to be one of the things he has to maintain throughout the fight. Easy gesture, feint, be consistent. That will keep Canelo Alvarez guessing when you're going to attack and keep him off balance. Okay? And then you mix that in with your jab work. That can cause more frustration. Feint, get some space, close the distance. Okay? Then back up. You want as much room as possible to work. Okay, against Canelo Alvarez, so you don't get trapped in corners and with your back to the ropes to where he's punishing you and you have no escape route, or your escape route becomes very predictable. So if you're Caleb Plant, I don't want you to never fight with your back to the ropes or the corner, but I want you for the at least first 4 rounds to stay out of those corners with your back to the rope, or stay off the ropes and stay out of the corners. The first 4 rounds. Make sure you're utilizing your movement and giving different variation and being creative and not being predictable, so you don't end up getting trapped, because you don't want to taste the full power of Canelo Alvarez within the first few rounds. You want to water down the bull. Like I said, death by 1,000 cuts. Start bleeding him out. And then you can start taking some risk and chances, which you will have to do whether you want to or not if you want to win the fight. I don't want to see too many combinations from Caleb Plant in the beginning of the fight, and he shouldn't throw too many combinations, with the exception of, jabbing up top and maybe ripping a body shot, because that's one thing he's going to need to do throughout the fight, establish a body attack. The best way to do it is match whatever Canelo Alvarez throws at your body. So if Canelo Alvarez throws one good hook to the body, make sure you match him or even double down on it. Because think of it like a street fight. You play this video game, Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, and you have those stamina bars. You want to make sure you match Canelo Alvarez's stamina bar. All right? And the way you do that is you match his body attack. Because even if he's breaking you down and he's slowing you down, if you're investing those dividends just as much as he is, at least you're both lowering your stamina levels at the same pace. Okay, so even if he's breaking you down, he's breaking down as well. He's getting tired as well. You're keeping it even. And it's going to come down to who wants it more and who's going to be more disciplined in their game plan. But you don't want to be at a point to where he's ripping you to the body, you're not matching it, and his stamina is at 80% in the 8th round and yours is at 40. That's going to spell trouble for Caleb Plant. So first 4 rounds, establish your jab. Make sure there's variation. Make sure there's creativity in that jab. Make sure there's creation and variety in your movement. Don't be predictable. Don't get caught up in the corners. Don't get caught up in the ropes, because that is a devastating position for you to be in. Don't throw too many combinations, because that will leave you exposed to getting countered early with 100% power from Canelo Alvarez. I want to see you pot shot more. The only time you should be throwing combinations if you're going to rip something to the body. And if you're going to throw power punches like your right hand and your hook, pot shot him. Throw a lead right hand, throw a lead left hook, and tie up immediately after. And that's another thing that's important for Caleb Plant throughout this fight. Tie Canelo up after you pot shot or even throw a combination. But it's easier to tie up your opponent when you pot shot. Shoot a right hand, tie him up, and hold on for dear life till the ref comes and he breaks the two of you apart. Why is it important to wait for the ref? Well, one, because if you break that clinch early, there's a chance that Canelo can clip you with a shot after he breaks the clinch. If you have the ref there, he's going to create space. You're safe. You're not going to get hit with anything. Most importantly, it gives you some space and room to work within this within the ring, and you can jump back into the center of the ring as soon as possible. That's another thing to note. Caleb Plant has to get back to the center of the ring as much as possible. He's going to get back to corner. He's going to get backed up to the ropes, and it's important to him to use that variety and movement and creativity to get back to the center of the ring, because that's going to give him the space to operate and work with. This is all easier said than done, but it's not far out of his capabilities. He has the tools to do this stuff, you guys. And furthermore, when you clinch up after those pot shots, you're stifling Canelo's attack. You're preventing him from countering you. You're frustrating him. You're annoying him, okay? Because he can't get off any shots if you clinch him immediately after. And that's why you got to clinch after a pot shot, because you're distracting him with an attack and then you're immediately tying him up. And sometimes you need to know when to do that in the fight to get back some real estate, okay, and get back to the center of the ring. So it's important to prioritize that if you're Caleb Plant. Always find your way back to the center of the ring so you have space to work with and you can execute a lot of variation in whatever techniques you're going to use. That 4 to 8 round range, that's when I want to see a little bit more risk taken. You have watered down the bull, you have matched his body attack, you have established your jab so you understand where you're at in space. Now I want to start to see some of those combinations you throw. Maybe that jab, right hook to the body, double hook to the left side, left hook to the body, left hook to the head. He loves throwing that. I want to see combinations like that. You know, punches and bunches. Start releasing punches to the head. Okay? But take these risks at the end of each round. This is a great way to win, leave a good impression on the judges. All right, because they tend to go based off of what they've seen last. At the end of each round, whether it be 30 seconds, especially in that 4 to 8 rounds, you may want to keep it within the last 10 seconds of the round. That's when you take some chances. Maybe even try to back Canelo up to show you're being the aggressor at times. Maybe you hang in the pocket a little bit longer, okay, within those last 10 seconds, and you try to steal the rounds, something that Danny Jacobs did very well against Canelo. He would try to steal rounds. He would take more risk at the end of the rounds. He would box, move around. In the last 10 seconds, he would press forward or he would let his hands go. And the beautiful thing about that, if you take that risk, it's a nice calculated risk. You don't want to take crazy risk. You want to take calculated risk. And it gives you a little bit of insurance because if you do get clipped with something, you get knocked down, guess what? You have the end of the round that possibly saved you. Hopefully you don't get flatlined, right? But if you do get caught, you do get put down, okay, I can go back to my corner and recover and take the fight to the next round. Steal rounds if you're Caleb Plant. Wait to steal them at the end of each round. Let your hands go. Throw punches and bunches and combinations. Okay? So that 4 to 8 rounds, I want to see more risk taken. When you start to get to that 8 to 12 round range, specifically 8 to 10, that's when I want to see Caleb Plant kind of sit on his punches a little bit more, especially from the 8 to 10 round range. Sit on your punches. Get comfortable with your back to the ropes. Okay, now it's okay for you to sit back in the corner in the ropes. You're going to conserve a little bit of energy. You're going to concern your legs a little bit more, right? Get in that Philly shell. Protect your body at all costs. Not because you're trying to be Mayweather. It's because that's the best guard to protect your body. Roll those punches. Catch, shoot, roll, catch, shoot. You don't need to let your hands go and open yourself to be exposed. Just catch and shoot. Catch, shoot, start rolling again. It's almost a form of a rope-a-dope. Canelo Alvarez has shown he can get a little bit tired in the later rounds, make him waste punches. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, Canelo Alvarez is going to hurt Caleb Plant. He's going to tear his bicep. He has enough power to do that. Possible. We saw it with Callum Smith. But it's a little bit harder to do that in close quarters where you can't fully extend your punches. But Caleb Plant is going to have to sharpen up his head movement. He's going to have to roll and time that shoulder roll at nice times when the punches are coming in. Catch and shoot with the uppercut. Catch and shoot with the cross. And what that does, it wastes Canelo's energy. Okay, on top of that, you stifle his attack. You stun him. And you go back to rolling. Especially in that 8 to 10 round range. Start to sit in that pocket a little bit more, whether it be with your back to the ropes or the corner or in the center of the ring. And then when you get to that 10 to 12 round range, that's when I want to see you more so back to what you were doing the first 4 rounds. Skating a little bit more, fighting on the outside, picking your shots, pot shotting, clinching up. Now you're just trying to make it to the end of the fight. Okay? But you do have to understand, even if you get it to the scorecards, you're going against the cash cow. You're going to have to make a statement. So that 10 to 12 round range, even though I want you to be fighting on the outside, Okay, picking your shots, being careful. At the end of each of those rounds, from 10 to 12, you have to steal those rounds and make a heavy statement. Let your hands go, let them fly. You're gonna take some shots. You're fighting for undisputed. You're fighting against the pound for pound best fighter in the world. It don't matter. You're gonna have to take risks somewhere. So in that 10 to 12 round range, let your hands go and fight like a dog in the last 30 to 10 seconds. I'm not saying being reckless with it, but you're gonna have to be the aggressor at those points. And then take the fight to the scorecards and cross your damn fingers that if you did do enough, that the judges will see it that way. That's Caleb Plant's best chance at winning. Easier said than done, okay? It's a mouthful, but even though it's a mouthful, he is totally capable of doing that. And I like that he worked with Andre Ward, because Andre Ward probably told him a lot of the subtleties of what he needs to do that he may have not known, okay, before he worked with him. The key is, you guys, protect the body at all costs with that Philly shell. Okay, water down Canelo Alvarez. Utilize your movement. Don't become predictable. Pick your shots. Pick your pockets in the fight to where you take chances, preferably at the end of each round. Match Canelo's body attack to make sure he's slowing down just as much as you are. And then go back to boxing at the end of the fight. And then once again, pick your spots where you take chances to make an impression on the judges. It's a lot. Mayweather did it, okay? But Mayweather is a completely different fighter with a different level of discipline and different level of attributes. But Danny Jacobs got to the end of 12 rounds and fought through it. Lara did. A lot of people considered that a close fight. Okay? Glaring difference between Billy Joe and Amir Khan to why they didn't make it out of those fights is because of those high guards. That high guard, okay? To where he had his body, they had their bodies exposed and they got ripped downstairs and they could not last in those fights. If Caleb Plant can protect that body, this is gonna be an interesting matchup, whether y'all like me saying that or not. If he can protect that body, it will be an interesting matchup. And if he is very disciplined and he implements the right game plan, it could be an interesting fight. Point blank, period. And I will come out with my prediction video tomorrow. I'm still really trying to make sure I'm covering all my bases on this before I come with a prediction, but this is what each fighter needs to do. It's a little bit more apparent on Canelo Alvarez's side than it is Caleb Plant. But tell me what you guys think. Comment down below. What do you think their game plans should be? What do you think's the best strategy Caleb Plant should take? Do you think Canelo's gonna do something different in this fight? Do you think he's gonna come in southpaw? I hear rumors about that. That would be interesting. Do you think he's gonna do what he's always done against most back-footed fighters? Explain to me. All right, remember, there's no emotion or narrative here. I'm just breaking down the fights. So this is your boy Havoc with Final Round. Get ready for the big fight Saturday, because it's going down.